I hope you're ready.
This is Unbridled Thoughts.
We want to hear what you have to say.
Hey, we're here again with Unbridled Thoughts. You got to forgive us because we have been recording all day up here in the hot Atlanta area. No?
Oh, never mind. Producer says no. Okay, so I'm going to start again.
No, I'm starting over.
Just keep digging. Just keep digging. Shut the fuck up.
Oh my gosh. Now you have to start over.
All right. Hey y'all, we're back with Unbridled Thoughts podcast. My name is Sarah. We've been recording all day in the Atlanta area. Right now we are in Snellville with one of my childhood friends. We grew up together in our small little town, Tehachapi, Rebecca.
Yeah.
But before we introduce her and get into her story, we're going to take it to Ren.
Hey, I'm Ren. Grab the reins and hop on the horse because there's no reins in Unbridled Thoughts. No bridles, no reins, and here we go. Let's get into it, y'all.
All right. So Rebecca and I we knew each other. We weren't necessarily bosom buddies.
No.
But we were childhood friends from
Yep.
the same town. And now we just happen to both be in the small town of our small area, small state of Georgia. And so I couldn't help but take the opportunity to interview one of my childhood bosom buddies and give us the opportunity to talk about growing up in Tehachapi. So what is your hot take on growing up in Tehachapi?
We lived in Tehachapi till I'm trying to think of when we moved. We were in Idaho for 4 years and we've been here for 6 years. So, I mean,
That's 10 years.
been there forever.
So
6 months, not 6 years.
Okay. Yeah, I was like, wait. No, we moved first.
In 2020.
Yeah, we moved out of California in 2016.
Yeah, okay. But I'm just trying to think. Like, I was 5, I think, when we moved to Tehachapi. So I lived there a long time.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a unique little bubble, I feel like.
It is.
So now, having come from California, moved to Idaho for a few years, and then now we're here in this massive area of Atlanta from North Idaho and
Right.
from tiny Tehachapi.
Yeah.
It's
eye-opening.
It was a little, eye-opening, but it just was a little bubble to me of goodness. It was good.
Yeah,
you know?
it was good, especially in the 90s.
Yeah, totally.
Not so much
Yeah.
now. Have you been back?
I haven't been back.
Don't go back. No offense, Tehachapi, I love you.
It's just, when we moved, and raising a big family in Tehachapi was really difficult because there was barely any grocery stores. There was no Walmart until we moved.
Yeah.
It was hard. Like every 2 weeks I had to just go, drive an hour to get food for my family, or go to the doctor, whatever.
Yeah. And we were hitting the regulars like Costco,
Yep.
Whole Foods,
Costco, Winco,
Trader Joe's,
every 2 weeks.
Winco.
Like,
Yep.
I mean, I just had to, or we couldn't survive. So,
Yeah.
that to me, like, it's just, a little bubble of goodness. There's good people, but kind of now being outside of that is definitely different.
Yeah.
But North Idaho is super great. Like, everything was very close by. Costco's 15 minutes,
Yeah.
Just made my life that
Yeah.
jump from tiny little Tehachapi
Yeah.
to not even a very big area, but
Yeah.
a little bit bigger. It just
Yeah.
made my life so much
Yeah.
easier, really.
Yeah, one of my childhood friends she moved to Idaho, I want to say back in like 2007 or 8.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
young in life. And she was like, once she went to Idaho, she was like, I will never go back to California.
Yeah.
And I didn't
Yeah.
understand it.
You
I didn't
can't.
leave
You can't
until
understand.
2016. Yeah.
You can't understand
Yeah.
if you haven't left. It's
No.
weird. You just can't
You
know
can't,
it until
yeah.
you've left.
So, oh God, keep talking because I want to just.
Ren is from California too, but she is from the larger part of our. She's more towards the LA area.
Yeah, more like the Orange County area. So y'all can research it on your own, but Mark Twain famously said that if you travel outside of where you are, you will have this greater awareness of the world than you did before.
Yeah.
He
And
says
that's
it more
true.
beautifully than I do. I'm kind
Yeah.
of summing it up. But most of the isms that people run into that halter them, searching out and looking and like sojourning around you, it kind of pulls those ism backs that like that humanity is kind of prone to. So
Yeah, I mean, well, and it's like we traveled and we did, stuff, but living in a different place long term is just
different.
very different.
And we lived in
And we
Colorado
loved it.
before
we
lived here, which now that I've lived here, for me and what I do, I can't go back to California because the living is expensive, but what I do for a living is cheap.
Yeah.
And in Georgia, what I do for a living is expensive, but yet what we living is cheap.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? For the most part.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I'm kind of stuck here.
Yeah. Well, that's not a bad place to be.
Yeah, it's not terrible.
No.
So growing up in Tehachapi in the 90s was amazing.
It was great. It was fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We had a great school system.
Yep.
We had great friends.
Yep.
We had great everything.
Yep.
Great food,
Yeah.
which I take advantage.
Yes.
Like I was like, oh, Tehachapi has such boring food. I wish we had da 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 da
Yeah.
da 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 da.
Yeah.
And then now I'm like, I would do anything if my little small town in Georgia had Tehachapi food because it was amazing.
Yeah, we loved our Mexican food. Definitely missing some Mexican food.
Yeah,
that's for
definitely.
Sure. Yeah. Good Mexican food.
Good Mexican
Yeah,
food.
yeah.
So, walk me through yours and Chris's love story. I actually have the specific memory of hearing that you got pregnant and then seeing you and Chris. I was working at Cheese's. Do you remember Cheese's?
No.
The coffee house?
I'm obsessed with this. She said I was working at Cheese's, and I was like,
okay.
what is happening?
Oh, gosh. Okay.
Yeah.
That's funny.
I remember seeing you guys like park in front of Cheese's and then like walk out, and I saw your pregnant belly, and I was like, oh my gosh, she actually is pregnant.
Yeah.
So what age were you pregnant with your first child?
So I got pregnant when I was 15.
Yeah. And when did you meet Chris?
So kind of funny, Chris and I actually, when we all grew up, we lived just like a couple streets down from each other.
Yeah.
And so we used to play, all the neighborhood kids gather, do their, bikes, whatever, and we played together, him and his sister, me and my brother, and so but didn't really realize that until after we got married, which is kind of funny. But my sister-in-law one time was talking about how she had gotten bit by a dog, and
how is our visual?
Somebody she walked into a garage and got bit by a German Shepherd, and I just was like, I think that was my dog. But we had already been married years. I mean, 10 years maybe even. I don't know. But I was like, oh.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Chris was possibly bit by your dog?
No, his sister.
Oh, his sister.
She was, though. It for sure was our
And that
house,
aggressive German Shepherd was a ring bearer at our wedding.
Oh, no, she was the sweetest dog. But just my sister-in-law she was running into our garage or whatever. And it was just like a territory thing. Anyways, it was just the funniest thing. So we had already been married for years and years. And I was like, oh, I think that might have been us. But
that was me.
So we played together as kids, whatever, like you do in your neighborhood. And then I don't know. I mean, in high school as a freshman, I was like, I like him.
Oh.
And it just kind of, we started dating. And
How many years was he older than you? I think
two.
Because Bobby and I were a year and a half apart from each other. So you guys were
2. So he was a junior, I guess. And
when was your birthday?
July 80.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I was June 80.
And so Chris is
But we were the same grade.
Yeah.
And then wasn't Bobby and him the same age?
I think so.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. But Bobby graduated, I think, in 97.
So
that's what Chris
was
graduated.
96.
Okay.
Yeah. So then he must have been in the middle of us.
He must have been, he's an early birthday maybe. What's his birthday?
January. Chris.
Oh, so is Bobby.
Yeah.
Of when?
78.
Okay, Bobby was 79, so he was
okay.
a year
Just
older
one
than Chris.
year.
Okay. We're just trying to back up. We're trying to create a timeline here.
I love this, and I also love that you guys were part of the same community before you ever became romantic.
Yeah,
that's a big deal.
Tehachapi was small.
You have to say we had one school district, so we had I think 3 elementary schools.
Yeah,
maybe 4, and one middle school and one high school. There's not. So everybody knew everybody. My parents grew up there before they moved away for a little bit and came back. And so, I mean, it's just literally everybody,
Bobby and I did not know each other until we worked together because of the fact that I went to Golden Hills and then I was in home studies from junior high on.
Yeah.
He was my TA.
Okay.
In PE.
Chris was my TA in Spanish, and that's the only reason I was able to pass Spanish.
Wait. What is a TA?
Teacher's assistant.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
they would like grade things. Or,
Yeah. So my Bobby was definitely the one who had to teach us how to stretch and stuff like that in PE. But
So funny.
I dipped out in 7th grade. My parents put me in home studies like halfway through.
Okay.
Yeah. So then I kind
Probably
of lost
really
contact of you and
yeah.
everybody else. And
Yeah.
I remember I was working at Cheese's when I saw that you had a little baby bump
Yeah.
when you were 15.
Yes. So that
Yeah.
obviously is, not recommended. I always tell people, don't do it that way. 10 out of 10, do not recommend.
It worked for Rebecca and Chris,
It
but
did. But it was hard. It was hard. I mean, it wasn't, it worked out. It's been amazing. We have 10 kids. We've been married, 29 years, I think, in July.
Yeah.
Our oldest is almost 29. So, yeah.
Yeah.
And, it was hard. It wasn't easy. It was not an easy conversation to have with my parents. And Chris called. We didn't have cell phones back then. So, he knew I was going to tell my parents that night, and he called. And I'm like, do not come over. And then, of course, 5 minutes later, we hear a knock on the door. And I'm like, oh, no. My dad opens the door.
With a
and
shotgun.
slams the door in my head. Well, slams the door in my husband's face. And Chris knocked again. And I was like, ooh, so it was from that moment on, it was good, it was fine. We all decided, we're having this baby, we're getting married, this is what we want for our life anyway. It just happened a little early. Again, not recommended.
Yeah.
But, and Tyler's, one of the best things that I ever did. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't.
He's a sweet baby.
He's amazing. He's
Yeah.
an amazing man. And
Yeah. Married to a beautiful lady.
Yep.
Has a grandbaby.
Yep, he has a little girl.
Yeah.
And then, and then that started this crazy life, and we just kept going from there.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And then Chris right away got into AT&T, right?
Yeah. He started when he was 19.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
And that's
that
how
was
you
a God
supported- 'cause
thing.
you've been a stay-at-home
mom. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was a total God thing for sure.
Yeah.
We in Tehachapi, most everybody worked at the prison. That's where I met. Both my parents worked. Both his
Yeah.
parents worked.
So is it was the prison like a larger prison?
Yeah. It was a pretty
Okay.
big one.
Like
yeah.
main
It was a
employment.
penitentiary. That's maximum
Yeah.
security.
Okay.
We had some big names in there. I mean, some of the biggest being Charles Manson.
I don't even know.
And,
my parents probably just kept all this from me, which I appreciate.
And we had one of the Melendez brothers.
Yeah, okay.
And
That's right.
Charles Manson actually died in Bakersfield, California, because he had whatever complications he had. And that's where they took him. And then he ended up dying down in one of the hospitals there. And when you research it, I think I tried to research it, and it said something about like one of the surrounding prisons. They didn't really say Tehachapi, California.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's a few. There was a few around there.
There was
but
a few,
Yeah, 'cause-
but there wasn't, I don't think, very many penitentiaries,
Yeah.
which is the maximum
Yeah.
security, which is where they sent some of the big, well-known names. You know what I mean?
Yeah, my
And
dad unfortunately had to work it.
Yeah,
that
because your dad
max.
worked at the prison,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, both my
So
parents did,
didn't
yeah.
work at the prison. I
Yeah.
didn't really have very many. My sister married a guy who was a prison guard.
Yeah.
That was the closest I had from
Right.
being to the prison.
Right.
But when we grew up, it wasn't very popular still. Tehachapi wasn't popular.
No, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I feel like now when you go back, I mean, I call them LA aliens.
Yeah. We sold our house to one of those ladies.
Aliens. They kind of have moved in and taken over,
Totally,
and
yeah.
it's just a whole different like community than what we grew up
For
with.
sure. But everything is different.
Everything is.
Everything's
Everything grows.
different
Yeah.
than the 80s and the 90s when we were
Yeah,
growing up. So even
but
in
coming
the,
back
you
to
know,
Georgia, I
2000
feel like I'm like stepping back into the
Yeah.
the later times in life,
and that's
again.
how we feel up in North Idaho too. Like
know,
really,
right?
it really is.
Yeah.
But the only reason I bring up that, everybody worked at the prison, both my parents and both his parents
Not-
did.
yeah,
So
just
he
a-
applied to the prison, of course, and he was getting through that process, and I think only had like maybe one more step to go or something. And AT&T at the time was pretty exclusive, like with their job opportunities, and so it was kind of like a friend of a friend has to kind
Yeah.
of, tell
Yeah.
you about this job or whatever. And so we knew a couple people that had worked for them, and yeah, he got on, just before the prison was about to call him, and we're really thankful because, nobody
Yeah, it
wants to
could
be
have
a prison
been a
guard.
whole different life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
So.
I think that where you guys ended up was a great place.
For sure. Yeah.
And
for sure.
is he still with
Yeah.
AT&T?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So he's been
yeah.
with them since 19.
Yeah, he can retire in 2 years. Yeah, he's 20.
crazy.
He just hit his 20 years in January, the 20th of January. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, he's worked very hard.
Yeah.
Very
So
hard.
did he ask you out or did you ask him out?
I'm trying to think. A mutual friend of ours, I basically was like, you got to get me, his number. Like, I got to know this guy kind of. And
You were a
yeah.
freshman?
Yeah.
And he was a junior.
Yes.
I love this.
Yes. I'm, I don't know, maybe a little more bold than
Yeah.
I give myself credit for. I don't know. But yeah,
you
I
were
just,
bold though in like I remember our elementary when we were in like what track were you in? I was in D.
Oh God, I don't remember. How do you
were in
remember
A.
that stuff? I have
In
no
Golden
idea.
Hills.
Maybe. I have no clue. That is crazy. I've lost a lot of brain cells. I've had a lot of kids. I cannot remember that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so I
But yeah.
remember you being kind of bold back in elementary, you know what I
yeah.
mean? So here you were.
But yeah, no, I was like, yeah, that's going to happen. And it did. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't remember. I mean, I guess it was kind of just maybe more of a mutual thing,
Yeah.
Like, okay, so.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And then, I don't know. I mean, dated. I don't know. We just kind of went to school and he drove me home, from school and took me to McDonald's. That was like the big thing. We had McDonald's and Taco Bell. And that's all, like, I think that's all the fast food that we had at the time.
We had, Jack in the Box was our first.
Okay. Yeah. Jack in the Box was there.
And then
yeah.
Taco Bell was second.
Yeah.
And then I remember when McDonald's came, it was like huge. We
It
were
was a
like,
huge
we're
deal.
getting a McDonald's. And then Subway came and it was like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, we're getting a Subway. And then now we have like 4 Subways. It's like
I don't
insane.
even know. I mean, I have one that still lives there, and they are getting all kinds of stuff now.
Which
Okay.
child still lives
So
there?
Dominic lives there.
Dominic still lives
Yeah.
there. Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Is he dating?
Not really.
And what
No.
number child is he? He's
He
like 5?
is number 3.
Oh, 3.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he's number 3.
Okay.
And then Dylan did live there for a little bit.
Okay.
But he moved back to Idaho, and then Noah's been in Idaho. too,
Little
so.
secret, my daughter always had a crush on Dylan. So she
So
probably
cute.
doesn't like me saying this, and she now knows that I said it publicly. But here we are.
Well, Dylan is adorable.
Dylan, she's always had a crush on you.
True confession.
So cute. That's hilarious.
Oh my
Well,
god.
my boys are very handsome, of course.
Yeah, they
and
are.
My daughters are beautiful.
They are definitely. And you have more boys than girls.
Yeah, we have 7 boys and
Yeah.
3 girls.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the girls are super spread out. So we have Tyler, and then Savannah was our first girl, and then we have Dominic, Noah, Dylan,
Yeah.
and then Lucas, and then Sophia. So it was like 15 years before we got another girl.
Yeah.
And then Sophia, and then Eli, Nick, and then Julia. is our
Julia.
last
Yeah.
girl. Yeah.
So, and I have a Juliana. So we're
Yeah.
we're very
And
similar.
I call her Jules. I call mine Jules.
Yeah, I call mine Jules too.
Yeah.
Well, she
I love it.
She now goes by Jules with a Z.
Oh, okay.
I did Jules with an S.
Yeah.
How do you spell Jules?
With an S, yeah.
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 Is it Juls?
Julie.
Oh, you do ES? Yeah. Okay. I just did JULS.
Yeah, yeah.
And now she's JULZ.
Okay. Well, that's okay. It's not that different.
Yeah. Okay. So you and Chris getting together at 15, when you were only 15, he must have been 17.
He was 17, yeah.
Always been like rainbows and butterflies?
No. You were married.
Yeah, no,
we're
it's never-
married. Like, no. No, and actually, I mean, our first year, we joked that we hated each other.
Yeah.
You know?
I think everybody's first
It
year.
was hard.
though,
It was
is
hard. Well, we, obviously being 15 and 17, he was 18 when we got married, but, and I was 16. Actually, it was the day after my 16th birthday because
And you are March, right?
I'm July.
July. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. You
So
already talked about that. Sorry.
July 12th and then July 13th is our anniversary
Okay.
because I had to be 16 with my parents' permission in Nevada to get married. California would not marry us.
Oh, so you had to go to Nevada.
We
What
had to
part
go to
of
Nevada. We went to Lake Tahoe on the
Okay.
Nevada side
Yeah.
and got married the day after I turned 16.
Nice.
crazy.
That is where my dad
So,
lives. So,
okay.
yeah.
So
And-
beautiful.
Yes. And that's where my
Amazing.
parents got married, my mom and my stepdad.
Yeah.
So very familiar with the
so
Nevada side of
beautiful.
Lake Tahoe, and
So
it's
beautiful.
gorgeous. Yeah.
So yeah, day after I turned 16 and he was 18 and Tyler was a couple months old. So again, not recommended, but
Yeah.
that's
And I
how it worked
remember
out for
running
us.
into you, I think you were at like baby 5.
Okay.
And you were
So
like,
that's Dylan.
or 4
Okay.
or 5.
Okay.
And you were like, I'm totally done having kids.
Yeah.
but you're like, funny enough,
Yeah.
Chris wants to have them now when he's never wanted to have any kids.
So I had my first 5. So by the time I was 22, I think I had Dylan when I was 22.
Yeah.
Having 5 kids at 22 is insane.
Yeah.
And so like I don't remember really saying like, I thought we were done, and we didn't have Lucas for 5 more years.
Yeah,
Oh,
we went to
love
Pampered
Pampered
Chef.
Yes.
Yeah, and I saw you. I was with Gina.
Yeah.
And you were like, I think you had just had Dylan, and you were
Yeah,
like,
probably.
yeah, I think I'm done.
Yeah.
You're all,
Well-
but oddly enough, Chris is like wanting to have kids
Well,
now. He
it's-
hasn't wanted to have the first 5.
Yeah. Well,
Does that sound about right?
Kind
Am I
of.
wrong?
Yes. No. Yeah. Like I mean, when you have one at 15 and then you have one at 16 and then you have one at 18 and then you have like, I mean, that's wild. That's
Yeah.
wild. And so I think we both were just like, I mean, we did love it. And,
Yeah.
but I didn't work. He worked. He had to provide everything for that huge family already. And I think it was overwhelming,
Yeah.
maybe,
Yeah.
And so, yeah, like we had, Tyler, Savannah, Dominic really quick. And
We
then
should have had Chris
just-
on the podcast too,
Yeah.
honestly.
Yeah.
We really
Probably
should
would have had a lot to say.
It would have been a whole different podcast.
Actually, he says that I talk a lot, so I can talk for both of us.
He said I wouldn't have been able to talk anyways. He
Yeah.
is quieter than you.
I would have been. Well, that's not actually how it went. I would have butt in until,
Like, actually,
Yeah.
we
So
just
it's probably
forgot
for the best.
We forgot to hit cancel on that auto ship from like stork.com, but like,
Oh, my
but
gosh.
before this, you were saying, I'm afraid I'm an overshare. I might overshare.
Yeah.
You're not the first person who said that to us. Like the
Yeah.
first female woman
Yeah.
that said that to us before we've been filming a podcast. And here's my thing. I feel like when someone comes to me and they say, I'm afraid I'm going to overshare. I think what's really happening is you have a lot to share that a lot of people haven't heard yet,
Yeah,
and you can
maybe.
feel it.
Yeah.
You can feel it.
Yes.
And
I don't
it's
know.
a little nerve-wracking, but
Yeah.
there are people out here that have a shared experience that haven't heard stories like this yet, and I think you can feel how big that is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm hoping that,
Well, I mean,
somehow I can help somebody somehow.
I told you, there's going to be some 15-year-old girl
Yeah.
out there who's going to hear the story and be like, oh my gosh, there
Hope.
is
Yeah.
hope.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If she stays with whoever she gets pregnant with, or if
Yeah.
she doesn't stay with whoever she
Right.
gets pregnant with, whatever the story is,
Right.
you know what I mean? She's going to say, oh my goodness, well, she did it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can do it with preservation.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's the biggest thing with you, is that the fact that you stayed the course.
Yeah. Yep.
No matter how hard the road got.
Yep.
You know, and I mean, we know being married, it's never rainbows and butterflies.
No.
You're going to have hard times and
Yeah.
good times.
Yeah.
I mean, for the majority I've seen you though, and you have always been just like uber in love with your husband,
Yeah.
and your husband's been uber in love with you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's a mutual
Well,
support.
I mean, yes, of course. And we're not quitters. And we, and it's not like, it's hard, it's not easy all the time.
Yeah.
But again, it's like, what's the alternative isn't better for us.
yeah. Yeah.
The alternative doesn't work for
Yeah.
me,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
for him. And
Yeah.
so our first year was really hard. The last 2 years have been really hard.
Okay.
Harder.
Because you've
than-
been in Georgia and it's a whole
well,
different shift
that,
and stuff.
but
and
yeah, just job stuff, and just we got uprooted, and
Mm-hmm.
we, when we moved from California to Idaho, my parents moved there a few months before us.
I know.
and we
And
were
you're really
sad.
close with your mom.
And both my parents, we're very, very close. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and they're great. They're amazing, and I'm just grateful to have been raised by them. Honestly,
I
like
know.
it's really great. But and they're very close with my kids.
Yeah.
And so
They're
I
great
just
people.
They are. They're
I've
awesome.
met both her parents. They are amazing people.
They are.
Yeah.
They're great. And so once we got to Idaho, and then it was like kind of what we were talking about. Like I had friends, but I just didn't develop really deep relationships.
Yeah.
And probably because I had 10 kids. And I'm sure people were like, we're not inviting Rebecca over with all her gabillions of kids, because that's terrifying.
No. I
But-
mean, I know from an outsider coming in, I mean, I think personally for you, like getting married so young, having so many kids at so young, there's like a little bit of self-isolation because you're so busy.
Maybe.
You know
Oh,
what I mean?
for sure.
Because
Yeah, for sure.
I don't know anybody in her hometown who doesn't think of Rebecca Todd and think you're amazing.
That's good to
You
hear.
know what
I'm
I mean?
Glad to hear
So-
that. But that's not always what I felt either,
Yeah.
But and I, there's wonderful people, but I just had a hard time connecting with people. And so I just kind of, I guess, maybe just focused on my kids and my parents and my family. And which was a lot
It was just
to
a
do
lot.
anyway, So, but when we moved to Idaho, we found the freedom that we were wanting. We found it and we loved it, and we love the outdoors, which in Tehachapi, there's really not a lot that you can do. There's not a ton of hiking. There's no fishing. There's really not. You had to drive for hours to go anywhere.
Yeah, we were like in a little pocket. We weren't, Well, Tehachapi was pretty.
Itself was pretty. It was.
But then you leave Tehachapi in any direction, like 20 minutes, and it was like no longer pretty.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're in some kind of a desert.
Right.
I mean, we were in the desert, but we
the height
were
is different. It was different.
Mountain desert. It was
Oak
totally
trees
different.
and mountains. And like there's no mountains here. People are like, oh, there's no mountains here.
Yeah.
Like, and so we went from, California to Idaho, where it's just what we wanted.
Yeah.
It's really everything, the freedom, the people, but like
the fishing,
the lakes,
the hiking.
you
you
guys
guys were always out doing
there.
things.
I mean, it just,
Yeah.
there's a lake 3 minutes or 3 miles, I think, or whatever from our house. And it's just beautiful, and pine trees. And anyway, so we just fell in love and met some really wonderful people and formed really good relationships with those people. And our church was amazing. And, it was just everything that we wanted, and that got ripped away from us. Chris was told about it, it might have been, it's about a year and a half ago, I guess, probably, that he was going to have to leave if he wanted to keep his job.
That was how it was with us when we first left California. Yeah.
And, if we were coming from California, we always say this, like we would have been, let's go to Georgia. Great. This is great, and this is very close to what we want, you know. But had we not been to North Idaho and made those relationships, and my parents are there, and, I have 2 boys that are there now. They're renting our house from us, and I just, it just was a really hard pill to swallow for Chris. Like, it just was really hard. He put in so much effort for his company, and it was really hard to be kind of treated, I guess, the way,
I think that's kind of pretty much the similar feeling that Bobby felt whenever he went, with his company, and he had to move to Colorado, and he hated it, you know what I mean? And he just had such a bad taste in his mouth, like a little bit of a grudge, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Colorado was great. I mean, Colorado was great for my business, but it wasn't necessarily great for his business.
Right.
You know what I mean? And then we went back to California, and you discover we can't live in California anymore.
Yeah.
Like once you're grandfathered and you move away, you can no longer do that.
Especially in Tehachapi, it was just that little bubble of somewhat affordability.
Somewhat affordability, yeah. And then, I couldn't really get my career back and going the way I wanted it to. And then, so here we are in Georgia, and we're finally doing financially, we're good again.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
For sure. Yeah. And like I said, if we had come straight here from California, we'd be digging it. We'd, it'd be,
Now, how
there's
is
so much
Idaho
to do
compared
here.
to California, like as far as pricing goes and stuff like that?
Well, Idaho did skyrocket. We got in just before.
Okay, good.
So I'm really grateful. We have a wonderful house, and we're like, I think it takes me 7 minutes to get to my parents' house or something like that.
Yeah.
So just being here, literally North Idaho to Georgia, like you can't get much further from North Idaho. So,
well, Florida, I guess if you were
barely a little bit further,
Key
a little
West.
bit, yeah. But so we're trying to make the best of it here, and but that's been hard for just our life. I mean, we got uprooted.
It's a short time though. It'll be fast.
Yeah.
It'll go by really fast.
A couple more years.
How many kids do you guys have actually in the household right
we
now?
have 5
right now.
How
many kids have you had at the whole time? Like what is the most amount of kids you've ever had?
Okay, so you asked me that, and Chris and I were talking about this right before I left. I was like, hey, I don't remember how many. So Tyler went off to boot camp.
Yeah.
So he's my oldest, went off to boot camp when Elijah was just a couple of months old.
Okay.
So he left in January. Elijah was born Halloween, October.
Okay.
So he was just a few months old. So that's 8.
Okay.
And then Tyler left. Savannah got married later and moved out, and she's pregnant with her 5th baby now. So we have
so exciting.
6 grandbabies. And her husband joined the Marines Reserves and ended up getting deployed to, I don't know, he was over in Japan. And so when he was gone, I'm like, well, just move back home with us.
Yeah.
So her and my grandson moved back home, and then she was pregnant with her second.
Yeah.
So, and then when her husband came home, they lived with us just for a short time before they got. So we had 13 in the house when they lived with us.
And that's
for a
the
little
most
bit.
you've ever had.
That's the most we've had, and that's a lot.
That is a
That's
lot.
We turned our loft, like we had a 4-bedroom house with a loft, a big house, which was great.
Yeah.
You
You had one of the KB houses, right? Yeah.
We did. Yeah, we did.
They were
I
like,
fought really hard to get us that house, though. Chris can tell. Actually,
they were
everybody
like
can
the
tell you.
coveted houses of Tehachapi back in the
We
day.
worked really hard for that house.
Well,
Yeah.
it's funny because one of the parts of us practicing this podcast, because this is our first podcast, I want to say together, but really ever,
Yeah.
is that we decided to interview each other, and so we researched things. And
fun.
I remember Sarah saying, patching, oh yes, Tehachapi, one of the translations is the land of many waters. And I said, okay, cool, and I wrote that down. So then when I was
That's what I was told as a young kid.
I don't think so.
Oh no,
It was dry as dry can be, right?
Dry as dry can be. So then when I was doing research and I was going to interview her, I was like, okay, cool, let me research stuff on Tehachapi. And one of the main translations was Tehachapi, translation, the hard climb. And I was like,
Oh, interesting.
so it's so interesting that you guys say that, because that does come up. And then
How funny.
also I hear you saying a few times that you went from isolation to community.
Yeah.
Isolation
Yeah.
to community.
Yeah.
So that's really interesting to hear that on your sojourn through life with your kids.
Yeah.
There's community here, there was people around, and there was conversation constantly, versus I was in one place and I was more isolated and I didn't have a community there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Working towards a shared goal.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I always think and just, with God, I always think I can just live this life by myself and plugging along, and then things go south and I'm like, oh yeah, can you help me please? It's just crazy. But I'm always like, oh no, I can do this by myself. And then I'm like, actually I can't.
Yeah.
It doesn't work that way. You're not
No, I
really
learned
meant
that
to.
really fast in my divorce,
Yeah.
because
I'm
I kept
sure.
thinking I'm going to do this alone. I'm fine. You know what I mean? And it's a difficult climb. And then you find people that you can kind of plug into, and you're just starting to create a community like I have now with Ren and her husband, Chris. You know what I mean? And it's just amazing. It's an amazing situation.
Good. That's
Yeah.
awesome. That's awesome.
Okay, so did you guys both want to have such a large family?
So we definitely didn't just, talk about it when we were 15, or like, hey, how many kids do you want to have? Like, it just happened, obviously.
Yeah.
And we're very pro-life, and that kind of is, is the thing, is we just, initially I always wanted to be a mom. That's all I've ever wanted to do. So I knew that I wanted kids. 10 is a lot of kids. I don't know that
4 is a
anybody.
lot of kids,
yeah.
so 6 more is definitely a lot.
4 was kind of our number that we were like, well,
Yeah.
our life is nuts. Our house is a mess. Like whatever. 5 is 5 and on. We're nothing different.
Yeah,
really.
yeah. That's what they say.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know that we set out like, hey, we're going to get married and have a big family, but we we're very, like I said, just very pro-life, and we love babies. And so, we always joke that Chris's favorite is whoever the baby is. So Julia's very lucky because she'll be the favorite.
She'll be the baby forever.
And she knows that, and she tells us, well, I'm the favorite. She just told me the other day, I'm the favorite, so I get to break the rules.
How old is she now?
6.
Oh
like,
my
no,
gosh.
that's not with me. Maybe with your dad, but not with me. You don't get to break the rules. But
That's so funny.
so no, but I think pretty early on, it was like, well, we were pretty good at this.
Yeah.
We can have kids, and so why wouldn't we? Kind
Yeah.
of thing
Yeah.
is the other thing, and we love our kids. Like they're
Yeah.
fun.
They're
They're
fun.
great.
Kids are fun.
They're
Yeah.
great. They're just great.
Yeah.
But when you grow up, you think, how many kids do I want to have? You don't really think about when they become adults.
I know, right?
And you're like, okay, I'm going to have 10 adult children at some point.
Yeah.
I think, let's see, Lucas, so I have
You're 12 years
5.
away.
Yeah, 5 that are adults, and it's maybe more wild than when they were 2, you know, like it's just kind of
Adult
crazy.
kids are a lot more wild. I can say
Yeah.
this from experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
good and wonderful. I love my adult kids, you
Yeah.
know, they're great, but it's a different kind of worry for
Yeah,
sure.
it definitely is a different kind of worry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm married. Me and my husband are together we've been married forever, and we don't have kids. But I've been an esthetician for over 25 years, and I love talking to my clients that have kids. And something that I hear over the course, living in Atlanta, where, Central Georgia, where I am now, something I hear over and over again is 1 kid is hard, 2 kids is harder, 3 kids is crazy, 4 kids and on, it seems to be more like the older kids are like, well, if I help mom and dad and jump in, it makes things a little easier.
For sure.
Mom and dad are trying to get out the door. If I jump in, I can help out.
Yeah.
And it seems to be what I hear over and over again when I pay attention and I learn from what my clients are teaching me. It seems after 4, it kind of becomes more of a communal situation, which is kind of cool.
Sure. Having a large family, it's just different. It's a different dynamic. You do all have to look out for each other. You do all have to, take care of each other. Now, with that being said, my oldest, my second was a girl, and so she just naturally helped a lot more, but I never wanted them, I didn't want them to feel like they had to parent my other kids.
Yeah.
So there's kind of a line there where you have to be really careful of your older kids, relying on them too much, I guess, for stuff like that. Obviously they have to, help and hey, go get your brother's shoe that I can't find or whatever, but I was always really conscious of it. I didn't want my older kids to be like the younger kids' parents, if that makes sense.
Yeah, like a Sound of Music situation.
Yeah. So I just was trying to just be careful of that always. But it's true. Elijah is my 8th baby, and he had acid reflux really bad, and I was like, people always, oh, you're such a good mom. You're a pro. You must be a pro. You know what you're doing. And he threw me for a loop because he screamed all day long. All day long. And I'm like, I haven't had this before. I don't know what to do with this one,
Yeah.
And we would go to the doctor for checkups, and really we don't take our kids to the doctor all the time, but as, little ones, just for those little checkups. And my doctor was great. My pediatrician was amazing, but he just would always be like, are you doing okay? And I'm like, yeah, I'm great. Why? I've had 7 other kids. Why wouldn't I be great? And he's like, okay, and then the next visit, I don't remember. It was first couple weeks or whatever, and then 2 months and 4 months maybe.
Yeah.
And by 4 months, he was like, how you doing? And I'm like, I'm not good. I am not this. I don't know what I'm doing wrong.
Yeah.
This is not good. He screams all day long, and I'm, I shouldn't say against medication, but I don't like, especially giving my kids medication and babies, but man, he took some I was like, I need it. I'm losing my mind. I can't handle this, and I was doing something wrong for sure. And he got that acid reflux medication, and Elijah it was like putting out a fire, and he was amazing, and I was so thankful for it.
Yeah.
But the reason I'm telling you this whole story is because my Noah, we always call him the baby whisperer.
Yeah.
And he's 23, and he just loves babies. I mean, he's all my babies, he just loves them, and all the babies, everybody. And
He's always been one of the sweetest.
he is so sweet, such a good kid.
Yeah.
And just adorable too.
Yeah.
But anyway, so he's gonna make such a good husband one day, because he could sense in me that I was getting stressed with Elijah because he screamed all day, and I'm sitting there with a baby on my hip cooking dinner, which I've done for, many years at this point with 7 other kids, but I'm so stressed, and Noah could just sense that, and he would just come get the baby from me, and I would finish dinner, and then I could I was like, you are going to make such a good husband, because if you can just pay attention to,
the little details
anybody
like that
it needs a little
He's
bit
always
of
been the
help.
sweetest, though.
He's super sweet.
That's not fair of me to say because I don't know them all, but
They're all great, but he just has had that weird sense of let me just take the baby from you so you can make dinner for
Strong
me
intuition.
and everybody else. It was. Very, very grateful for that. And, with that being said, I mean, Dylan was always really good with the babies. All my kids have been very good with all of our babies. I mean, they're great. We love babies.
Was there ever a time when Chris or you were like, okay, no more babies, and the other one talked the other one into it?
Yes. I mean, Chris early on was like, hey, we're not doing this. Like, and it was just, I think the fact that it was very overwhelming.
I remember seeing you actually like 2 babies and pregnant with your third, and you're like, Chris is going to kill me if I get pregnant again.
Well, it didn't happen. He didn't kill me and we had lots more kids, so he wasn't that mad.
Yeah.
But no, it was definitely, and I think it was just because we were so young and he was the provider, and it was overwhelming, and it was never really like, we will not have more kids.
Yeah.
That was never really a thing, but it was just like, this is a lot going on kind of thing. And then, so, Tyler, Savannah, Dominic, Noah, Dylan. I mean, that was all pretty quick.
Yeah.
Dylan, after we had Dylan, we had a 5-year break. And so we just were like, I don't know what's going on. We're just, God gave me a bit of a break which I was grateful for. But Dylan actually was like, we should have another baby. And we're like, okay. And so then we had Lucas. And then kind of Lucas was kind of the same with Sophia. That was a 4-year gap. And it was like, let's have another kid, and then, Sophia. And then it was like, I don't know. I mean, we just had babies.
Yeah, you just had babies.
We just had a lot of babies. But so Sophia and then Elijah, I had really bad preeclampsia.
Yeah,
with him.
I remember that.
And
you
so that
had a
was
little
really
health
scary.
scare, and I didn't know if you guys were going to have any more after that.
Yeah, well, we did not try after that because it was very scary. And, I'm grateful that he was fine and I was fine. But it was a really scary time.
Will you share a little bit more about that condition and what that entails?
Yeah. So the way that it went for me was, and I think there can be a lot of different symptoms and stuff like that, but I've always had really good blood pressure, even while pregnant, always been, relatively healthy. I've dealt with some autoimmune stuff that I've been able to overcome, which has been great. But my blood pressure just kind of started going up, and the doctor was like, it's not that high. But for me, it was high, but not that high. And that happens, I think, a little bit. And then we were visiting my brother down in San Diego and drove home. It's a 4-hour drive to Tehachapi from San Diego. And I get out of the car and my calves were like massive. And I'm like,
this ain't normal.
I'm like, Chris, and he's like, oh, so we went to the doctor and, and then they were like, so then the blood pressure kept going up and it got really, really high they thought I was on drugs. Actually, they drug tested me.
Oh my gosh.
And when I got to the hospital, they're like, well, you really don't have any other symptoms, and so they I don't know what they thought I was on, but I wasn't on anything.
Yeah.
So it was hilarious. We laughed and said, yeah, sure, go ahead, But my blood pressure skyrocketed from that point, and it was like 225 over 175 or something like that. And, they thought it was going to have a stroke or whatever, and so gave me some meds to lower that, and then they induced immediately, and he was born, so his birthday is Halloween, which is not my favorite holiday. And so I was like, no, I don't want to have him on Halloween. And they just said, oh, it'll take hours, it'll be fine. It'll at least be November 1st, like we'll induce you now, it'll be hours, well, it was not hours. I mean, it was a couple hours.
How many kids were you on? Because I know they induced me with Kingston, and it was like 45 minutes.
So, that's my story with Julia.
Yeah.
But no, it was like 3.5 hours.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, which is quick.
Yeah, it's so quick. I know.
Super quick. And then, so that was scary because, the doctor comes up and they're like, hey, we're going to induce you, all these different side effects of what the medication could do, blah, blah, blah. And, your baby's a month early, and so that could be really bad, and that was horrible for me. I couldn't handle
Kingston
the thought
was a
of
month
that.
early too, but my water broke, so they had they had to induce me.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and then that was scary, and like we didn't try, but we did get pregnant with Nicholas, and he was born 5 weeks early, but it was only 3 pounds, 13 ounces. So he was in the NICU.
Wow.
And I did have preeclampsia again with him, but a lot more milder, except that it caused him to have IUGR and just stop growing. And so, you know, because of my slight high blood pressure at that point, just he couldn't grow with that. And so he was in the NICU for 2 weeks, and that was
Tough, yeah.
horrible.
And where is he in it? How many?
So he's number 9.
Number 9,
Yeah.
okay. And then you had Julia. After
And then Julia, another like, oh, okay, we're going to do this again, you know. And yeah, I had all kinds of problems with her. And I had some issues, and that kind of started labor at about 32 weeks, so 8 weeks early. And that was scary. So I was in the hospital for that for a couple of days, and labor stopped with her. But we already knew that she was over 4 pounds, so we felt like she'd probably be okay at that point anyway. But, you know, I held her back in, kept her in for about like 4 more weeks, so another month. And then...
Then a month early.
Yeah, she was a month early.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was having contractions, and I am like, Chris, we gotta go. And this was like, I don't remember. I think my contractions started, but you know how it goes.
Yeah.
Like, and I had been having contractions for like 3 or 4 days, but they kind of started, and they were pretty mild. And I went to bed, and I woke up, and I was like, we have to go to the hospital now. And my poor husband. He getting in the car. My daughter was supposed to be with us, and we didn't even wake her up, you know. And
Which one,
Savannah was going to
Yeah.
come. She was with us from, I think, Sophia on. She was with me when I gave birth. So, you know, that's just she's awesome. So I just wanted her there, but we didn't have time. And so my poor husband. We're driving, and I mean, quickly things intensify, and Sarah knows, but there's really not a great hospital in Tehachapi.
No.
Okay, so
You have to drive to
Can I ask
Bakersfield.
you too? What do contractions feel like?
Oh.
Very painful. Very bad. I don't know. Gosh, I don't know how you could describe.
Like if you think of cramps.
Yeah, like
But then at the
menstruation
same-
cramps.
Yeah, so
Okay.
you kind of have cramps, but then also it's like if you can imagine having like a ball in front of those like those menstruation cramps, that's like trying to like squeeze and push down.
And lots more pain than that.
Yeah, so you're having these contractions, and they kind of like squeeze into your stomach, and they like are pushing down into your
Oh, the muscles are.
the muscles.
Yeah.
Are. Yeah,
Oh,
they're
wow.
like, and at the same time, like your hips, which is
Yeah.
not something that you experience during like being like just having a period or something like that. Your hips are spreading, and you can kind of feel that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's very painful. Very painful, but not painful enough not to do it again.
Yeah. 10 kids later. 10 and 4 kids later, here we are.
God has made, I don't know, but that's perfected, because you somehow don't remember maybe the extent of the pain, and then you're like, oh, let's do it again. And then by the time you're like 8 months pregnant, you're like, oh, I remember now. I have to do this again.
I think just making the baby is so much fun. That's the problem.
You're not
We
wrong.
just enjoy making the
You're
baby.
not wrong.
Well, and
Yeah.
also doing like facials and body treatments on women who are pregnant, especially like into the 3rd trimester, and I kind of start doing plunger rocking and things. I feel like their pelvic bones, their hips will start click, click, click,
yeah.
and I'm like, oh, this is what relaxes the hips to make
Yeah.
them open up for childbirth.
Yeah.
But it's so cool, like you learn those things,
It's
and so
pretty
that makes sense. So your
amazing.
body every day is getting primed for this big
Yes.
event. It was
Yes.
just really cool.
Well, and then you have fake contractions, you know, really for a while,
Braxton
which can
Hicks.
be a little
Braxton Hicks,
scary
yes.
for like, you're like, oh no, you know, my husband always makes fun of me because we always went to the hospital a couple of times before
Oh, we went to a
each
couple
baby,
times too.
you
We
know.
had 4 babies.
It's like a
I'm like, I
snooze
think
alarm.
everybody did that.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
you know, like not just me,
Yeah.
but anyway,
Well,
so
they're
Julia,
so intense. Sometimes you really do feel like, oh my
Yes.
gosh, and they start coming on so common, and you're
Right.
and then you're living. We lived in a little isolated mountain
Yes.
town, so in
That was
order to go to
scary.
a hospital, you had to like drive 45 minutes to an hour
Yeah.
down a windy
Yep.
road that may or may not be closed because due to snow
Yep.
or an
Yep.
accident or something like that.
Yep.
So it was always just kind of like, if you felt something, it was just kind of like, I don't know what else to do other than just to go to
Let's
the
just
hospital at
go.
this point.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, and so that was kind of the thing, that late night in January.
Yeah.
You know, and luckily we didn't have snow, but yeah, I was like, babe, we got to go, you know, and he can tell at that, especially with number 10. He's like, okay, like this is real. Let's go. And so we're driving, and they had just opened the new hospital, but they didn't deliver babies there. So we did have a decent hospital, but they weren't delivering babies yet. I think they might be now.
I don't know.
They might not
Like
even
we don't
still
offer
be.
that service yet.
Yeah. But so Chris goes,
Pardon our mess.
my poor husband, Chris, says, you know, can we, should I stop at the hospital here? You know, and I said, no, I think we can make it. Which he always tells people, if your pregnant wife says you think you can make it, don't
do it.
Don't risk it.
Oh no! So
So-
did you deliver Julia in the car?
Yeah.
Oh,
You didn't know that?
Oh no!
Yeah. So my husband delivered her. Yeah, we went probably, and he was flying, and he does not speed. Everybody that knows him, he's like a grandma driver. Poor guy, is trying to hold my hand, and like, you know, especially a very quick labor, if you only had 45 minutes with your
Kingston.
then you know how intense that is.
Yes.
It's so much more intense than a
gosh,
10-hour
yes.
labor, you know, because you have to get all that work done in that
When you
period
go
of
to
time. Like,
when you go
it's
to
not
0 to
even-
60 in just a few minutes, you're like,
It's-
it's a lot of pain.
It's something else,
I
yeah.
was dying with Kingston.
Yeah. So I'm hanging on to the car like, oh, you know, and my poor husband's trying to hold my hand. And because I'm not like those women that, like, I don't mind being touched. I know a lot of people don't touch
Yeah.
me. No, I'm not like that.
No,
but
me neither.
I'm a good laborer, I think.
Yeah.
And yeah, poor guy. I'm like, just drive. You know, I don't know how fast he was going, but he was flying. And so we made it just to the bottom of the mountain at that Murray Family Farms there.
Yeah.
And they had just built a gas station that was lighted up.
Yeah.
And so he
I
pulled
remember
over
it.
and he called 911, and there's bad signal there.
Yep.
So the first call dropped, and he called again, and we got this lovely lady that was just amazing. And she, I'm sure, could tell from my noises that it was quite far along, because your noises kind of change, you know.
Yeah.
And
Gets a lot desperate.
yeah, especially when you're in the car and not at the hospital. So yeah, we pulled over, and you know, yeah, I mean, there was a couple of things that stood out for me from that night, but my husband delivered her.
Wow.
Yeah, and
I didn't know that.
yeah, that was
Yeah.
pretty wild. That's
Yeah.
maybe why she's his favorite. But
Oh.
I think it's because she's the baby. But-
Yeah.
I mean, and it speaks a lot to like a lot of women that live in like smaller towns, smaller communities, more isolated areas
Yeah.
versus a metropolitan area.
Yeah.
And then I remember coming across when I was doing reading and research just through my life about this article someone wrote, and they said, we know more and put more funding into galaxies millions of miles away and oceans thousands of miles of deep than we do the female body. And the
I
fact
believe
that women have been doing this since the dawn of time, and we still don't know that much about it. So the fact that you're like, oh, we have a hospital, but we don't do that. What do you mean you don't
I mean,
do
they
that?
would have, obviously,
They
in an
would have,
emergency
but you are
situation.
specialists, but it's also like this is where humanity comes from.
Right.
How
Right.
is there not like how was that not the baseline?
Yeah.
Right,
So
right.
it's really interesting to me.
Well, you know, I have a lot of friends who have, you know, home births.
Yeah.
And that's just not, I've just not been comfortable with that. Not for, you know, I'm sure it's lovely and wonderful, you know, and if I had had my, you know, babies in the car previously, maybe I would have considered it, but because it turned out fine, you know, and it was fine, and it, you know, was
I
scary.
mean, there's a lot that
but
can go wrong. I know with like Kingston.
that's my thing is
Yes.
it's scary. It's too scary.
Yeah, I
for
mean,
me.
I know like with Kingston, I mean, I gave birth. I'm pushing one and done kind of person. I'm not going to take a break, like how
Yeah,
they make you
yeah,
try
yeah.
to take a break between the head and the shoulders.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
I was like, screw you.
Yeah.
This kid is coming out.
Yeah,
I'm done
yeah,
with this.
yeah.
And with Kingston, you know, they always tell you, oh, take a break, stop. And I would never stop.
That's so
I would just
hard.
power through.
That's so hard.
Yeah, I
So
would just
hard.
power
Yeah.
through.
So insanely hard.
Yes.
Actually.
And so with Kingston, I was like, screw you. I'm powering through like I did all the rest. And then something inside my gut told me, no, actually stop with this one. And the doctor actually told me, I'm so glad that you stopped, because Kingston had his cord wrapped around his neck so many times and so tight that you would have killed him. You would have broke his neck on the way out.
So scary.
You know what I
It's
mean?
so scary.
And so, I mean, you just never know what's going to
No.
go wrong.
Well,
and what could, I mean, I know my grandma, like, literally, like, gave birth on the cotton fields and, like,
Yeah.
you know, kept working on the cotton
Right,
field. You know
right,
what I mean?
right.
She didn't even take a break. But it's just, I mean, she also lost a lot of children. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so we
it's
just
scary.
don't. Yeah, we just don't do that anymore.
I mean, there's certainly, like I said, I know so many people that do it, and so many things are, they have lots of babies, and it's wonderful. And I love getting back home. I love being home, so I get that.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's just not. It's just not my thing. It's just not my thing. But I had one in the car, and it worked out fine. But I do remember a couple things. The 911 operator. Thankfully, we kept her on the line because, you should not have signal there. And like I said, our first call dropped. But she told Chris, she's like, "Hey, now, Chris," and she was very calm. "She's going to be slippery. Don't drop her." And so he didn't. He didn't.
Yeah.
He caught her, I think, in his sweater. And my sweater was also ruined. We always tell her, "You ruined our favorite sweater." But
Dang it, child.
Yeah, so he caught her, and after you have a baby, there's this cord, and there's still a placenta inside of your body, and so it's not like you can just pull her up until that's cut. And so she just kind of was down there, and Chris had her, and it was freezing. We lived where there was snow all the time. It was 30 degrees or something like that, 1 a.m. And so he wrapped her up, and I'm like, "Is she okay?" She just took one breath. She just went, "Ugh." And he's like, "Yeah, she's fine." I'm like, "Okay, well, that went better than expected." And again, she was a month early. I had this crazy blood clotting disorder, so that was terrifying me, but I was fine. And so they called 911, obviously, or I'm sorry, they called the fire department was coming. 911 had them on their way, and they got there about 5 minutes later. And this, firefighter or EMS or whatever came up, this just young kid. I'm certain that one of my other kids was older than him. I was like, "Hey, ma'am, I'm going to help you deliver your placenta." Like, okay. So it was kind of wild, but sweet guy, sweet kid. And so we did that. And then tons of firemen were there, and they were helping out.
All spread eagle with all the firemen.
I mean, I had just had a child. So
and in our small town, this is a big deal.
Yeah. But this was something that just I was I don't know why I should be surprised or shocked or whatever, but I just thought it was amazing. I had just given birth to my child, and they get me out of the car because I had her in the front seat. Chris tried to get me to the back seat, and I was like, "I'm not moving." And so not a lot of room there, but so they get me onto a gurney to get into the ambulance, and all the firemen are standing right like this. And I'm like, "Why? You guys go do something, or whatever." I realized they were shielding me from the freeway traffic that was right there. Cool. And I thought, "Thank you."
Yeah.
So
that's nice.
It was nice. Pretty.
We do have an incredible fire department. I mean, just that whole Tehachapi, Bakersfield area is just amazing. Yeah. And I mean, I tell people all the time when people say, "Oh, are you affected by the fires?" We get a small fire, it is out. We've never, knock on wood.
Yeah.
We've never really had to worry about it.
Not really. Yeah. No, but it was just,
we have the wind.
I just was like, "Oh."
Yeah, I
so
know.
sweet.
That was really cool.
It really made me feel very good. I was amazed.
Also, I'm gonna nerd out. I remember reading the story of the Batavia, and one of the characters is a true story, but it's like a Dutch shipping company. But one of the main people that played a role in that, his wife had a blood disorder, and it turned out during that time period and prior, a lot of people didn't know, unless you're a midwife, you were supposed to birth the placenta.
Yeah.
And his wife didn't, and it stayed in there.
Oh, wow.
And so she was diagnosed with a blood disorder, but people didn't know any better.
Oh, my goodness. How wild.
I don't know the whole history of it, but I guess they pulled midwives out of that situation and were like doctors only. And it's just really interesting.
Yeah.
The history of female medicine.
Yeah.
I love it.
For sure. Oh yeah. Yeah. No, it's definitely amazing. And that's why I've always chosen to go to a hospital, but I don't ever want to knock midwives it's amazing. It really is amazing. And they know women so well.
Yeah, they did. I always kind of secretly wanted to do it, but we never did because Bobby was afraid and he wanted to have all the babies in the hospital. So that's what we did.
Well, and I don't know. I just felt more, that was just me.
Yeah.
I just
It's
felt
a
more
very
comfortable there.
personal
You know?
choice.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. And you should be allowed to have that choice is the
Absolutely.
thing, to make that choice,
Yeah.
you know.
Absolutely.
Now, giving birth in the car is a little different, but
But I mean, what is
Again,
a
not
truly
recommended.
intimate story? But
it was, I mean, my husband's my hero for
Yeah,
sure,
yeah,
you know, and
yeah.
definitely was at that, in that
Yeah,
night.
yeah.
He kept his calm, you know, even
Yeah.
though he has PTSD from it for sure. Like the first couple times he drove by that, he was like, oh my gosh.
I can't
Like
drive by here.
legit PTSD. Like he
No, I'm
was
glad you're
scared.
sharing
Yeah.
that. That's an
Yeah.
important thing to share.
Because that, you know, it's like you have your wife's life in your hands and also your daughter's.
Yeah.
That's a
Yeah.
big deal,
Yeah.
you know, and we've, you know, he's been there and watched it a bunch of times, but he's not actually been the one to, you know, do it. I mean, we didn't have anything to clamp the cord with.
Yeah.
So he had to use a shoelace,
Yeah.
you know, I mean,
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. Like we just didn't, you
Yeah.
know, you don't know that kind of stuff, you know, and you don't think about it in that situation. But
No, you
he was
don't.
amazing. He
Yeah.
just, you know, was trying to keep me and the baby warm and shut the door, and then he'd run and get back in, and then he'd come check on us and then run and get back on. Like he just, he was very, very
He's a
amazing.
good
So,
guy.
yeah, he is.
He really is.
Yes.
So I can't even imagine, like, when you had 13 kids, what was your grocery bill?
Well, when we 13 in the
people.
house. Oh,
Yeah.
I mean, so that was always something that, like, I've always tried to be really good at, you know, budgeting for groceries. I mean, because
You have
it
to,
was
it's
more than our
essential.
mortgage for sure.
Yeah.
And I mean, you know, $1,500. I mean, we're probably close to that still, but you know, probably about. Yeah, I mean, we definitely spent more than that.
Yeah.
For sure. And when we had the 13 people, but groceries weren't, you know, crazy like they are now. But a lot. It was more than our mortgage for a long time, what we had budgeted for
Kudos to
groceries.
you guys for being able to afford it. And
Yeah.
you guys had your kids in sports. I mean, it wasn't
Oh,
like
yeah.
you guys didn't do anything.
No, we
you
did
know what
soccer.
I mean?
Yeah, we
So
did. No,
how
Chris
was your
worked his
routine,
butt
like
off.
trying to get out of the house and everything?
You know, I'm probably the worst housewife out there.
No.
Yeah, that's not my thing. Like
Yeah.
I love my babies. I love homeschooling them. I love that, and we do a lot of that. You know, we go do all kinds of fun stuff, and we love going on adventures. And I love that these 5 little kids are just up for an adventure all the time. Like they're so fun. I always call Lucas my bestie because you know he's just fun. We have the same sense of humor. So
I
it's
love
like,
that. Yeah.
it's fun. But so like I'm not good at that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. Like that, I
Getting them all out
need
of the house.
inspiration from some other people. Like I'm not organized. You know, that's just not
Who you are. Yeah.
that's not my strong suit. You
Good
know,
for you though
Yeah.
that you can like admit that.
Oh
You
yeah,
know what I
no.
mean?
Oh, everybody that knows me knows that I'm not.
I'm running
mean,
on two Hot Wheels, so I
oh my
understand.
gosh. Well, and I even told my husband today before I left to come here, because we're planning on going up to Winder tomorrow for a homeschool soccer thing, and then we have a homeschool thing on Tuesday and one I think either on Wednesday or Thursday, and then all the other days we homeschool at home. And so I told him, I said, you're going to have to just, you know, be okay with the house being a disaster for this week because it's just wild. And I don't want to spend my life doing that.
No.
That's not
Yeah.
what I care about, and Chris doesn't care. And you know, I mean, it's not gross. Like it's,
Yeah.
you know, like I do the dishes and stuff, you know. But
Yeah.
but that's just not priority in my life. I'd rather spend time with my kids doing stuff.
I mean,
and,
I
you
can
know.
say, like, in my marriage, I was type A, and I kept a really clean house. I mean, we know Gina, and Gina
Yeah.
would always say, your house always looks like a model. It doesn't even look like kids live here, and I had the 4 kids.
Yeah.
But in my single life, not so much.
Yeah. You know, that stresses me out.
Yeah.
Having to keep the house clean stresses me out.
Yeah.
Like, and I just don't want to do it.
I know, I know.
There is a
That's bad.
There's a fantastic Instagram account I love.
I'm
called
not on
Struggle Care.
Instagram.
Oh, that's okay. I mean,
Isn't that
you can
crazy?
find it
Okay.
most platforms, but Struggle Care, and she talks about that accommodations and just doing what you can, and
Yeah.
how seeing the perfect picture of how a home's supposed to be, no matter where you are in your life as a woman.
Yeah.
It's very detrimental.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it
because
is.
you're seeing a visual of the point of perfection,
Yes.
and that we're not perfect as people.
Yeah.
And you can't keep a perfect house when you have a lot of kids.
Yeah,
you just
struggle
can't.
care.
You just
Right.
can't.
You just
You
can't.
really
It's
just
not-
can't.
Yeah.
We have a lot of
Yeah.
stuff because we have a lot of people.
Yeah.
You know, we have a lot of shoes, and we have a closet overflowing with shoes because you know.
Yeah.
That's just. But I wouldn't change a thing, and I'm. You know.
Yeah.
that's one thing that I can get better at. Now that my baby's 6, like I definitely,
It's a little bit
it's
better.
a lot
Yeah.
better.
Yeah.
I don't feel like I'm drowning and pulling my head out of water,
Yeah.
and
There's a
little
lot of
easier.
years. I know I
Yeah.
only had 4 kids, so
No, but that's
there were
4's a lot,
definitely
yeah.
times that I was like, I am a zombie right now,
Yeah.
and I am a walking zombie, and I worked.
Yeah,
you
I
know,
did-
different than
I'm
yours.
so
You didn't
blessed,
work,
yeah.
And it was just like, man, just deal with me right now. And speaking of dealing with us, yes, we have gotten dark. We're outside. We're filming in a park. I know there's people walking past. I'm sorry, guys. I'm just saying sorry right now. It's been all day in Atlanta, so just deal with us. We're almost done. I really want to touch on, are you still doing Plexus?
Yes.
Yes. So
Yep.
walk
Yep.
us into that whole Plexus journey. When did you start it? Like,
So-
and give us the.
I started that. It's kind of a bit of a story, so I'll try to make it quick. But
We have all the time in the world. We'll sit
Okay.
here in the dark, and they can just. For you who are seeing the visuals, just stand by.
I dealt with some autoimmune issues, and
Yeah, I remember.
my mom always had a lot too, and so I was very sick and very tired for a long time with a lot of kids, and it was really difficult. And so I prayed for an answer for that. Like that was one of my prayers. I need help. I can't. It was just too hard. I don't want to live life from the couch anymore. That's
Yeah.
how I always described it. Savannah, my second oldest, she'd make dinner for our family a lot because I'm like, I can't. I feel so sick. I just can't do it. I felt like I had the flu, like the achy part of the flu, almost every afternoon.
Yeah, I relate to that. I have some autoimmune disease. Which
Yeah.
ones did you have?
Well,
Did
see,
they
that's
ever diagnose you?
No, so that's the thing
Yeah.
is we were leaning towards lupus.
Yeah.
But I mean, I did have some other, like I had alopecia. Thought I was
Yeah.
gonna lose all my hair.
Yeah.
At one point I had giant patches and I have a lot of hair. And so that was hard to take. Of course, Chris said he would love me still if I was bald, but I was like, no, I don't want to be bald.
Yeah.
I like my hair,
Especially because you always had like beautiful, luscious hair.
Yeah,
so
I'm
that
like,
was kind of your
no.
thing.
So that was rough.
I remember when you
That
were going
was
through
rough,
alopecia. You came to
yeah.
me as a hairstylist
Yes.
in California back in the day. Yeah,
That was horrible.
Yeah.
But anyways, and just different, I don't know, just nothing like major. And that was the thing is that, I'd go to doctors and they'd say, oh, it's just stress.
Yeah.
It's just stress, and I'm like, but that's not my personality.
Yeah.
I'm not a stressful person,
Yeah.
I am a little more now, but I wasn't. I really wasn't. And I just, well, you have 9 kids. Well, you have 8 kids. Well, you have,
6 kids. You have 5 kids. You have
and
4 kids.
You're stressed. So,
Yeah.
of course, your hair's falling out.
Yeah.
You're stressed. So, of course, you feel like, you're
Yeah.
exhausted and you're
Yeah.
tired and you're achy and
Yeah.
and I was like, you know what? I quit going to the doctor. And I just thought, I need to find my own answers because you're not giving me anything. Like I literally cried to my doctor begging for medication, and I'm not a medication girl. And
I think we may have had the same doctor, and we won't name names.
Yeah.
But yeah, mine. I mean, he put me through like 3 years of like. He never diagnosed me. I had
Yeah.
to go to a specialist.
Yeah.
And he finally diagnosed me.
well, and I quit before that point. I was like,
Yeah.
I don't want to do this
Yeah.
anymore. I don't want to be told you look fine. Well, you look fine. Well, I don't feel
Your blood's
fine.
fine.
I don't feel
Your
fine.
numbers are fine.
Yeah, your blood
Just because
looks
you
fine,
can't see it doesn't mean it's not there.
And that was really frustrating.
Yeah.
And my mom, because she has had some autoimmune, she knew, and that was comforting because, she knows how it feels, whether you look good or not, you
Yeah.
don't feel good,
Yeah.
So anyways, and I just thought, what, I'm done with this. And prayed. And a friend, had this, I don't even remember, talk to us about this company and their, supplements. And that's like totally not something that I would have normally done either.
Yeah.
I'll just get my vitamins from the grocery store
Wherever,
or whatever,
yeah.
And she's a sweet friend, and must have been something, or maybe what I think it was God answering my prayers.
Yeah.
Of I need help. I can't live like this anymore. I don't want to live like this. And so, so I started those products 10 years actually, like this month, like probably we're probably right at the 10-year mark. Yeah. Cause Eli was a baby and, I have not had one autoimmune issue
Ever since.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, that's a lie. When I had Nicholas, because he was so early, they gave me antibiotics through IV because I hadn't done the Group B strep test or whatever. And so they gave me antibiotics, which if I was in my right mind, I would have refused, but I just didn't want my child to die. So that's what I was focusing on. And so, those are strong, heavy antibiotics that wipe things clean, wiped your gut.
Yeah.
And about 2 weeks after that, I started feeling that feeling again. And I thought, well, crap, and I was like, I am not doing this again. And so I maintained my supplements all through pregnancy. They were approved by my doctor and everything. So I still was using them, but I upped my doses a little bit, and I got that knocked out again. And I will never stop. I will never stop because, I want to live. I'm almost 45, and I have grandbabies now, and my youngest is 6, and I'm like, I want to go have my adventures with my babies. So I'm really, really grateful.
Just your husband. You guys.
Eventually. We still have a little ways to go,
you still have a little bit. You'll have at least 12 years, but you're getting there.
We'll go travel all around the country to see our babies.
I love that.
So I am really grateful. It's been good. I've made some money with it too, which has been nice. I've never had to pay for them.
Which is good.
Really great. But
have you been successful with Plexus, like carrying it on to like Idaho and now Georgia too, like as far as making money and being able to promote yourself?
Yes. I mean, again, like I bought the initial products and I've never paid again since then. I mean, my paycheck pays for them for Chris and I, and it's.
So if anybody's like curious about Plexus, like where could they find you? Like, you have your Facebook, Rebecca Todd?
I just do Facebook.
Okay.
I tried Instagram.
We're old people.
I tried Instagram once and I was like,
grandma's over here.
Facebook. Yeah, Rebecca Todd. Yeah,
Rebecca Todd. 2 D's.
Yeah.
2 C's.
I want people to find what works for them.
Yeah.
And I never want to push, because maybe it won't work for you. I don't know. It worked for me, and I'm never stopping. And and I'm not going to live that life again. So.
Well, I think supplements. I heard a doctor once say that almost every disease or every issue that you can have is either too much minerals or not enough minerals. So if you can kind of figure out what that is, what I mean? And I know for me, once I got diagnosed with my autoimmune, which I've gone up to 3 now, but I don't go to a doctor. I don't have insurance, so I don't go to a doctor. And for the most part, I'm medicating myself with minerals, you know what I mean? And you just kind of do your thing, and kind of. And I'm sorry if you're picking up on background noise, guys. We have a party going on here in Atlanta at the park.
There's always parties going on.
There's always a party in Atlanta.
Especially in this neighborhood.
Yeah. Well, I've enjoyed this journey with you and listening to everything. I've kind of known bits and pieces of it as we were growing up, but we were living the same timeline, born the same year, you know what I mean? And but not walking the same lifestyle. So it's just kind of nice to kind of catch up with you, see a familiar face from California.
I know. It's been great.
Yeah, and I've always adored you. I really have. I've always adored you. I always admired you, even when I saw you 15 and pregnant with that sweet first baby of yours.
It was pretty crazy life for sure.
Crazy life.
No, I wouldn't.
But here we are, kicking it and killing it, girl.
It's awesome.
It was so nice to meet you, and thank you for sharing so many facets of your story.
Did I overshare?
No, there's no such thing.
Not at all.
Because somebody is waiting to hear you speak your voice and speak your truth, and someone's been waiting for that.
Yeah, and somebody's going to hear. You know what I mean? And moving with your marriage, that's hard.
Yeah.
And even though you might have that perfect partner, that doesn't mean that perfect partner is not going to go through situations where they're like, I'm not happy where I'm at right now.
Well, the thing is they're not the perfect partner. I'm not a perfect partner. Chris is not the perfect partner.
Right. Jesus is the only perfect man.
Yeah. But I mean, there's no perfect marriage. There's no perfect mom. I always say, if people are like, I've got this life on lock, they're lying to you. We all struggle with something, and if you pretend to not that you don't struggle, you know, then you're lying.
Right.
Right? I don't know. That's what
Not
I'm
true.
saying. Yeah. I don't know. But yeah, I did pray this morning at church. Like, I just want to say what I'm supposed to say.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I mean, I think that like your story is going to resonate with somebody. If it's a young girl who's found herself pregnant, or if it's somebody who is having a bunch of kids against the odds, or we're about to die. We're about to die, folks.
The battery, not
Either
us.
way,
Yeah.
you're a beautiful soul. I'm thankful that we got this opportunity
Me
to see
too.
each other
Thank you.
again.
Yeah.
And people, that's a wrap.
Bye.